Okay, so today we're talking about something nobody wants to ask about in the comment section. Nobody wants to pose a question in the community tab. No, this question only comes in my DMs, only comes via email, WhatsApp, in consultation, but it's never ever just publicly posed on social media or anywhere. And it's just in 2019, are we still scared of having this conversation? I don't understand. I don't understand, guys. Why? Hello and welcome to Sangoma Society. UMakhosi Nomabutho. I'm Honey Tell a Story on all social media networks, and today's question is about menstruation, the period, lady days, moon time. It's quite a major one. It comes up for a lot of people, and I get why. Because obviously, if you're in this process of trying to build this relationship with your ancestors, or you're a practicing healer and now you find yourself unable to work or having inhibitions about working at this time of the month, you've got a lot of questions. And honestly, some of the answers that are out there are really they leave people feeling a certain type of way, and I get why, because I really think that they're misleading in a way. So how did we get to this part where we're told that we can't do certain things when we are menstruating as people who menstruate? How did it come to this? So when we look at what anthropology shows us, there's a lot of talk relating to isolation and menstruation based on the way that we lived pre-civilization and that impact on day-to-day lives of women. So for instance, first of all, pre-modern civilization, wild animals roamed everywhere. So wild animals, we know their sense of smell often leads them. If they're hunting, they can smell blood, and if you're bleeding, you become vulnerable, so there's no reason for you to be outside. You understand me? Then the next reason comes with hygiene, and modern methods of managing the hygiene around menstruation were not yet there. And then comes the relation between menstruation and spirituality, and when the two began to overlap. So there's so many schools of thought here, and first and foremost, let me just say, in the African context, no, you are not unclean. Seriously, no, you're not. It's got nothing to do with being unclean. In the African context of spirituality, and in some Eastern understandings of spirituality where we engage with our ancestors and commune with them in sacred spaces, the reasons that relate to menstruation and not interacting at that time of the month are specifically around what is happening in the body of a menstruating person at that time, which is you have the potential for life, which was your egg, and it is not fertilized, and it is now passing through as it should. It's passing through, the potential for life will, begin once again. That process will start from the top in your body and cycle through until once again that potential is released through your menstrual cycle. And now, when you're in that process of releasing, there's a few things, practical reasons, that you just can't possibly. We're going to circle back around now to the ways in which we used to live. So when we're talking about hunter-gatherers, when we're talking about societies in which communal farming happened and things of that nature, there is no way the heavy lifting that was expected of women who were predominantly at home or closer to home doing the farming, as opposed to hunting, that kind of physical labor, gathering firewood, making a fire, cutting the meat, harvesting vegetables, fetching food from storehouses, preparing meals, that is very labor intensive work. Anybody who's a stay-at-home mom in the year of our Lord 2019 can tell you it is labor intensive work. And when you're on your period, physically, can you really facilitate that kind of work? What became was a ritual based on the practicality of the situation, that a woman needs to be healing and communing with herself, because there is an actual sacred element to what is happening in your body as you go through your menstrual cycle. And it's important that you turn your attention inward at that time and commune with yourself, commune with your spirit, and allow this process to happen. I mean, if right now the way you're allowing it to happen is Netflix and ice cream, good, great, but why should you be working against what your body needs at this time? It doesn't make sense, right? So there's a lot around the practice of withdrawal during the menstrual cycle that has to do with practicality. And then you say, okay, but like I personally, as a healer, find myself physically fine, I don't have an issue, and I want to be able to work. Most of us, where we initiated, we were taught different methods that you can use, umlota, imithetizeni, different things from different schools that you use before ungene emsamo. Why do you even have to use those things to begin with? Like, that's a question. That should be your first question. Why do you have to do those things? Because one of the first things any initiate is told when they enter emsamo is that first and foremost you are a healer before you are man or woman. So how come all of a sudden when it comes to the menstrual period there's a difference between us? Well, as a person who menstruates, male or female, you have this potential in your body to hold life. And when you're on your menstrual cycle, that potential is passing from here into the hereafter, into the ether, into whatever, but it's dissipating and it is leaving your body. So on the spiritual front, let's take into account that our ancestors often are communicating on a frequency that we cannot understand. Masiya emsamo, whether as healers or as seekers, what we're doing is we're going to a place where somebody, either ourselves as the healer or the healer if we are the seeker, has to tune into the frequency that our ancestors used to communicate with us and interpret the messages that are being transmitted between us. It's taken into consideration that when we're on our period, that frequency is not what it normally is, because there is a whole other element of life that is happening, transitioning through our bodies at that time. So just for that, nje, when you go in emsamo, there might now be this added layer that is going to be problematic, which is why there are many healers who say, umusesikhathini, don't come emsamo. Do you understand? And there are many other reasons that are stipulated and given for ukungezi emsamo, and most of those really just have to do with frequency that would be channeled at that time in your life, and that if you're coming through at that time, you're probably not going to get the correct message, or amadlozi aphethe loyo muntu, who is the healer whom you have gone to find answers from, will not be welcoming of a person in that condition, and therefore there are those rules. Now, to address the question of, are you unclean? Oh God, can you see my eyes rolling? Did you pick that up? Seriously? No, you're not unclean. You're going through a period of transition that needs to be honored. There is a whole other chapter of sacred womb healing that Ababelegisi would be able to guide us through, talk us through about the sacred nature, in fact, of our periods, of our menstruation time. And really, that is why those rules existed. It's not as simple as the patriarchy would like us to think, that you're either clean or unclean. No, it's much bigger than that. This leaves one last question. What about someone whom has been taught that they can either use certain medicines or certain elements in order to be able to still continue working during their menstrual cycle? That is going to be entirely between yourselves and your ancestors, because that's their relationship. They're the ones who can say, yes, no, it's fine. I know some healers who every single ceremony that they had when they were initiating, they went on their period, you know, and they were given the medicines to either stop the bleeding or allow their presence to be acceptable to the ancestors during ceremony. And for them, until this day, whether they're on their period or not on their period, they still continue to work. However, there are others amongst us whom, regardless of that guidance and all those ground rules that were set during initiation, when we come home and we follow those rules, when we get to Msamo, me particularly, you know, my ancestors have made it clear that that's not how they roll. They don't want me there, you know. And I found out the hard way, really. It was like I got kicked out of my own Msamo. It's like, okay, cool. Have to accept that, you know. I'm not doing umsebenzi wasemsamo for myself. I do it for abadala. So if abadala say when you're on your menstrual cycle, don't be here, go and look after yourself, then that's what I'm going to do. So you really have to look into the rituals that you build in and around your menstrual cycle. Look at the potential that your menstrual cycle holds for your life in terms of showing you the patterns that might be occurring in your life, or signaling changes that might be happening in your life. It's a sacred time. Use it for healing, use it for cocooning, use it for replenishing. I hope that I've answered at least that one question which keeps coming up. Is it sacred or is it unclean? What is the truth? If there are still questions that come up from this, and I'm sure there must be many, please don't hesitate to pop them into the comment section. Please, ngiyacela. I've said it now, it's in public. People with wombs menstruate. It is known. If you have a womb and you menstruate, or you are in a relationship with a person who menstruates, please, let's not have shame about this. It's a human function, natural function of the human body. Let's talk about this. Let's have this conversation. Use the community tab, use the comment section, and let's see, maybe it's a topic that we'll pick up again on another day. There's definitely a lot to be said, and it's a whole other world. But for today, I hope that I've answered this element of this question. And until next time, Makhosi. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a heart. Leave a heart. Leave a heart. You know my favorite heart.